Welcome, welcome, welcome. And thank you for joining us on another episode of today's Electrical Estimating. I'm your co host, Chris Trommer. And as always, I'm joined by my other co host, Sal Huerta.
Hello, everyone.
Well, Sal, we find ourselves at the end of August at this point, which means obviously this episode will be a recap of the last couple that we've been putting out in the month of August. I wanted to bring up a topic that we recently talked about with Paul. If you remember, he's a procurement manager, mid-size electrical contractor out in the Midwest. We talked a good portion of our conversation about e-commerce and how a procurement manager interacts with e-commerce, how efficient or effective, or how much it makes his job easier. And it was good to hear from a source that has hands-on experience to the e-commerce platforms that he deals with his distributors. I thought his comments were definitely enlightening and interesting coming from the user standpoint.
You can see from the conversation that we had with him that the human element was what's more important these days, and there's always has been. The idea that if you build it, they will come scenario doesn't necessarily work in this instance because, again, you're dealing with lots of moving parts. And as great as technology is, and as good as all these e-commerce systems are, there's still too many holes in between that someone's got to fill. And again, you're asking this in this particular case, the contractor or the procurement person or the estimating person to fill in all these blanks when that just adds more workload for them.
I mean, it's funny that we talked about this, and then yesterday I came across an article that talked about e-commerce from the distributor's viewpoint, and it echoed a lot of the things we've been saying over the last five, maybe plus years. In the beginning, distributors were looking at e-commerce sites as a digital branch for themselves, someplace a contractor can come and purchase the products online without having to speak to an inside or outside sales rep. But over time, from this implementation of these e-commerce sites, distributors are seeing very low sales. I think they were mentioning something above just over 5% of their sales coming from there, where an average around 2%. And as I mentioned, I spoke with somebody that said they'd seen 1% of their overall sales coming from their e-commerce site. So I think it echoes what Paul was saying when it comes to the usage of e-commerce by contractors. And what you just mentioned there, it doesn't make it more efficient for them. It doesn't make it more time effective, and it doesn't make it easier. It actually adds time, it adds resources, because they're having to jump through multiple sites, putting in hundreds of products across them. And then, furthermore, going down the line, tracking across all these different sites because nothing is integrated for them to easily manage it all.
I think that's the key right there is that all these different platforms are whether they be a distributor side or he's looking up information from a manufacturer site, is that they're all different. And so you're asking someone to sit here and look at 40, 50 different websites and try to figure out 40, 50 different ways of communicating with each of these, or even just looking up information on each of these. That just adds a tremendous amount of time that, in this case, the estimator or procurement officer just doesn't have.
You even mentioned during our conversation with Paul that it looked like we didn't need to reinvent the wheel at the point where e-commerce was coming out. And Paul even alluded to that before the comment was made, that things at the time were working. Phone calls inside sales were working. They were getting the information they needed, emails, spreadsheets. It sometimes feels that, like you said, you create something and then you're hoping that people come to it, where it could have been more of improving on what was already there and creating systems that made what was already happening a lot easier, other than going through and just creating a whole new way of doing business.
I think one of the main factors when it comes to e-commerce or procurement or things like this that we were talking about is the fact that the outside and inside sales reps for these companies do make a huge difference. The personal relationships they have with these contractors and the people within these contracting companies is huge. And when you take that element away and just say, "Oh, just go to my site and do that," that's what created the big disconnect. because, again, these sales guys not only just, talk about their product lines, but new items and new things and functions that coming out that their company is doing that does add value to these contractors and not just a point and click kind of scenario.
It makes me think of the last conversation we had with Cheryl Lynn that went up last week, how we talked about how technology is influencing the estimating space over the last couple decades, which you've seen firsthand, and how the telephone and estimating software all have played their part. But there's also been technology that has come out that has been talked about as being the next and best greatest thing, but just never has taken hold. You made a good point with your 3D TV there. Yeah, sometimes things are done in haste where people are looking at it as keeping up with the Joneses or other industries or what they think people may want, and it just never comes to fruition. Do you think there's other technologies out there that may be in use or could be emerging that would be a lot better off for contractors making the estimating or procurement side of this whole journey a lot easier?
Yeah, there are, and but they're not going to be the big splash. I mean, that's a new technology is not going to come out and just revolutionize everything. When we talk about the estimating software, it came out in the DOS computer era, back with the old big mainframe computer type of scenarios, and it had to take the baby steps to get to where it is today. Same way today, other technologies that are going to be in procurement, that's going to be in estimating, that's going to be in purchasing and bidding and project managing and all these things are out there, but they're slowly starting to get traction. So it's going to take them a little bit more time for all of it to consolidate to where it all makes sense to have somebody in front of a computer with all these different platforms in front of you that all talk to each other. But as of right now, they're all going to be singular just because someone likes this version and someone likes that company and someone likes this type of thing. And as long as you have those silos right now, that's what's going to keep them separate. But eventually, and again, it could be decades from now, it could be 2 years from now, but whatever it is, it's going to eventually come down to a platform that's going to be able to communicate across all the different software programs.
One of the things that has been a huge buzzword, we've talked about it with some of our guests, is AI. And it's funny because I look at AI, I use AI and throughout my day. But looking back at the e-commerce, how it was such a big push that people had to utilize it to revolutionize their company or if they're going to be left behind. I feel like the same kind of conversations are being brought up about AI. It needs to be incorporated. You need to be using it someplace. If you're not using it, you're falling behind. I think though this time around people are being a little bit more timid into where they're going to be utilizing it. They're thinking a little bit more on how we can utilize this best, what portions can it be used for, and not going all in as some places did with e-commerce and saying this is the next best great thing. But they're saying, okay, hey, AI may have a use in this place or that place, but I don't think it's there 100%.
We've talked about this a lot where it's not always all or nothing. There's always going to be segments that it's going to benefit and do fantastic in, and segments that it won't. We talked about the e-commerce platform a little bit on this podcast, but for B2C, e-commerce works great. It's fantastic. It fits the niche, and that's why you get those big Amazon boxes in your front door every day. B2B, it was a lot more difficult. It's still not there where it needs to be. Same with AI. There's going to be areas where AI just fits in naturally. Someone who needs to write an email better, or something on your phone where you need to have it, redo what you just typed in. Things like that. It seems to work really, really well right now. There's going to be other places where it just doesn't yet, and they're going to try to force feed it into these other industries or these other ways of communicating that's not going to work right away, and it might not ever work right away. So those are things where there's going to be some industry or some parts of AI that's going to work great and quickly, and some of it that's just not going to be there yet.
Yeah, like some of the guys that mentioned that takeoffs were something that they could see doing it. Remedial tasks, simple counting or understanding the symbols and breaking it down so that somebody's not sitting there having to go through each of them. But as you just mentioned, I mean, there's areas where I think people might try to force AI into that maybe it's just not going to be ready for or be used for, and that you still need that human touch, that human influence in that space for it to operate correctly. I guess time will tell for us where these items will work. But I feel like right now we're in a similar area as we were 8 years ago with that push from a lot of, different outside sources saying you need to adapt or you die kind of feeling.
Right.
But I also feel like a lot of these new things that are coming out for people that are saying, hey, this is AI, use this to do this better or that better. Some of them necessarily aren't really an AI that we think about. I mean, in the true form or fashion, some of them might just be programs that are hailed as an AI system. So I think it's something else that people have to be aware of. And I think a lot of people that we've talked about, maybe some of the conversations haven't made it onto the podcast, but just in passing with some of our guests, are taking more of a time of researching into what is coming into the market to better understand before any implementation is being done.
Another point to bring out is that even though the buzzword is AI, it doesn't necessarily mean that it is. Someone could be saying something as an AI, but it might not actually in reality be. Give you a great example just for us. We've had a synchronization process to where the estimating program through NetPricer would synchronize the database of the distributor that the contractor is working with. And so if the contractor is looking for an item and it's manufacturer B, but the distributor stocks manufacturer A, we have a synchronizing process that goes there and finds the item A for it, gives the information back to the contractor in his estimating package and said, I know you wanted B, but here's what the distributor stocks manufacturer A, and here's the price, or highlights it for him and tells him this is what's been changed. That is a form of AI, but it's not actually the way we think of AI. Other people think of what AI is. So again, that's the one caution you have to have, is somebody could just take an existing process and say it's AI when it probably might not be.
Yeah, I mean, in my eyes, AI represents machine learning with the artificial intelligence. If it's not something that's learning over time of your preferences or who you are, or making the processes easier, then is it really? I mean, and there's probably a better definition. That's just mine. I haven't really read the definition on it. But I feel like when I use there's certain ones I use on my computer that over time it learns the language I like to use. It learns how I write. It learns how I try to express myself. That to me is AI. It's something that's learning over time. I think it's going to be sort of a Wild West kind of feel, because I feel like I'm getting bombarded time and time again with emails regarding a new program that's coming out that's AI, or this new, faster cloud-based software utilizing AI to make my life easier. I think there's a lot of them coming out now, and I think it's just going to take time and research for people to better understand where these can fit into their already working systems. Well, so that's all I got for you today. I think it was a good recap of,
Yeah,
what we've been going over. We'll be back next week with a brand new episode. So until then, take care.
we'll see.